Yes, Mr. Chair.
Anytime, buddy.
Robert Ackerman,
I'm here.
Jamie Bell,
Here.
Tina Certain, Nicholas Hill,
Here.
Robert Murmer,
Here.
Joshua Ney,
Here.
Stephanie Sutton, and Jason Sanchez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, passes unanimously. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of last meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And again, approved unanimously. All right, it's at this point in the show that we ask you, the members of the public, if you have anything that you want to get off your chest that is not tied to an agenda item today, you have 3 minutes to talk. If you do not, we will be grateful to not have to use the 3 minutes and we can move on with our next bit of business. But if you want to talk about something, you can do it. And seeing nobody, we'll turn to Mr. Chan for our first bit of old business.
Yes, this is, 2025-514 Mobility Program Text Amendment, LD 25-000058. This is the Land Development Code Text Amendment to establish the mobility program, specifically the mobility fee portion of it. And here to present is the consultant for the Transportation Department, and Scott Wright.
Hey, good evening, members of the board. I am not the consultant. I am Scott Wright in the city's transportation department, and just going to give a little brief introduction, maybe a recap a little bit from the last meeting, and then also kind of provide a little bit of context about what we're going to talk about tonight. And then Jonathan Paul will jump up and do the bulk of the presentation. So recap, at your June meeting, we did hear 2 petitions related to the mobility program. One was a comprehensive plan amendment and the other was a land development code amendment. And you did vote to move the comprehensive plan amendment onto the city commission and then directed staff to provide additional information on the land development code amendment petition. So that's why we're here tonight, is specifically just to talk about that, the land development code changes. And next slide, please. Oh, no, I've got it. That's right. Sorry. All right. So the documents that you've been provided and that we're talking about tonight, firstly is the text amendments themselves. These are all within Article 6, which is the development standards in the land development code. And for the most part, it's a bunch of smaller tweaks, but then we are actually adding an additional division, Division 7, at the end of that article. And that lays out sort of the logistics of a mobility fee and mobility program. Maybe I should have said this at the beginning, but the mobility program is a replacement for our existing TMPA, Transportation Mobility Program area, which is mostly covered today in the comprehensive plan. So we're moving some of the logistics out of the comp plan, voted to approve that enabling language at the last hearing, and now we're including the new language outlining how this program works in the land development code. We have a mobility fee schedule, which would be included in the appendix in the land development code, and that's the fees that cover all sorts of different land uses and the different zones that we'll talk about in a little while, and how those would be applied to development. And then there's a technical report, which that lengthy document kind of outlines the legal basis for the program and a lot of the details with the computations of how the fees are determined based on the unique elements of Gainesville and so on and so forth. The particular item that you all asked us to provide at this meeting was a comparison of, well, I guess looking at some real world examples for previous developments and comparing those TMPA fees that were charged to what would be charged in terms of the fees under the new proposed mobility program. So we provided a big table that kind of lays that out, and then the additional piece of information in that table is comparison to the county fees, the current county fees, because they have a mobility program very similar to the one that we're proposing tonight. And we can get a little more into those details as we go on. And then lastly, because it has been 20-something years since this program has gone through a comprehensive update, there's a little bit of a shock, might say, in terms of how far our fees are lagging behind the true construction cost and the true transportation needs here in Gainesville. And so we're proposing a phasing schedule to kind of implement those fees over a period of time, 4 years. So you can find details on that in those phasing schedules. So that's that. That's what we're talking about tonight in terms of the documents. How do we do these? How do we apply these fees today? It's not a lot different than what we're proposing, other than the fee calculation is a lot different under the new system. But the Transportation Mobility Program Area fee is based on trip generation. And we have a stack of ITE manuals, Institute of Transportation Engineers. And when a development comes in today, we look in that manual, we determine what use that new development is, and sometimes it might be multiple uses. Usually the engineer provides a trip generation table, and we can kind of like verify that with the manual. And we determine how many trips that development's going to put on the roadway system. There's a multiplier depending on what zone that development's in. And so then we determine what the fee is based on all of that information. This kind of happens through the development review process. So I would say one benefit of what we're proposing now is we can provide this table, this document that allows the developer to determine prior to entering the development review process what the fee might be. So there's a little bit of an improvement in transparency there, I would say, a little more predictability. If you don't listen to anything else that we say tonight, I would say this is really important to understand where the mobility fee would not apply. There are essentially some exemptions, and this is very similar to the way that we operate today with the TMPA. If a development or if a use is inhabiting an existing building or an existing space, then there's no fee that's applied because they're not going through the development review process. So say the top restaurant closes, it'd be a dark day, but and something else wants to move in there, an office or a bank or whatever, we don't review that through the development review process. So there's no there's no mobility fee applied in that situation. Another exemption would be for single-family lots and duplexes. So if you buy a lot in East Gainesville or in the Stephen Foster neighborhood and try to do some infill development or split a lot and try to build a house on a second lot, that doesn't pay a fee through the proposal that you have before you tonight. Same thing with accessory dwelling units. As you know, under the code today, you can build a attached ADU, you can build a detached ADU, and none of that would be charged through the program. And then lastly, so those are all small scale developments. But even with a larger development, if it does not increase transportation impacts, if you tore down a 200,000 square foot shopping center and build another 200,000 square foot shopping center, there's no additional transportation impacts on the system. So there would be no fee charged. And that doesn't have to be like an apples to apples thing. A lot of times we see banks changing to restaurants, drive-through restaurants, and back and forth, and that's almost a wash in terms of transportation impacts. So that does happen a lot today, and that would continue under the new system, because the purpose really of this program is to account for transportation impacts that development has on our existing system, and have them account for that through the fee. So a little bit of history. I guess our TCA program was originally instituted in the mid-90s. But in 2002, this is what the zones looked like. We had a Zone A and a Zone B. And Zone A was essentially exempt from any fees. I think that was kind of like seen as an economic development measure that we were trying to encourage development in those areas at that time. And so that's why that was set up that way. Zone C was added in 2005 in the southwest, and that was largely due to annexation in that area. And then we added a Zone D, E, and M. D is basically west of the interstate, and E was the Plum Creek annexation primarily, now called Weyerhaeuser, I guess. And then M is the Urban Village and Butler Plaza area. So that Zone M actually has the highest fee per trip today. So just to give you a little bit of an understanding of how this evolved over time and you know, the dates that these zones were originally established. So this is what it looks like today, not a lot different than it did in 2009. And then if you compare the creation of those zones to the increase of construction cost over time, it's important to understand that we're a little behind in terms of accounting for the true cost of transportation improvements. This is the Federal Highway Administration's construction index. And you can see there at the beginning, when Zone A and B were instituted, that's the 1 in 2003. They were actually created or finalized in 2002. And basically, our construction costs today are 3.2 times what they were at that time. So a lot of the fee increase that we're seeing being proposed here has to do with just the cost of construction over time. Just wanted to show that just to provide a little bit of context. We did kind of try to work with the consultant some after the last meeting, and we do appreciate the attention to detail that you guys were giving to the fees. It kind of made us take a second look at them and realize that, you know, there were some issues where we're seeing like 2 and 3 times the fee. And so we spent some time trying to tweak some things a little bit as much as we could, but basically the bottom line is through our discussions with our consultant, we realized that what we're proposing is really like the true cost of construction today. This is the true cost of meeting the transportation needs that we have in the books. So that's why we came up with the phasing schedule approach. And obviously there's different ways that you can kind of deal with that, you know, mitigating that over time, but that's what we're proposing tonight. And yeah, I'll sit down now, and Jonathan Paul will jump up from New Urban Concepts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for the introduction. Jonathan Paul, Principal of New Urban Concepts. And just a general overview of where we were at. We have developed a mobility plan for the city, comprised largely of many projects that are already known within the city, but also including those that are in the long-range transportation plan, the various bicycle pedestrian master plans. We sort of broke it down into a streets plan, multimodal. We provided a lot of that detail that we've discussed previously, and all this information is available online, including all the individual projects. The amendment itself is largely based on a cleanup of the existing language. Most of the changes were actually made at the comprehensive plan level, because that's actually how the TMPA system is currently regulated. And then we basically established the framework for that to switch over into the land development code itself, which is how most mobility fees and impact fees are done throughout the state. Here's just general overall steps to develop a mobility plan and a mobility fee, and this is all outlined and detailed in the technical report. And the technical report is largely there to ensure that we're meeting all legal and statutory requirements. And then this is the actual technical report itself, and these are the various steps that we go through. It's a methodology that we've used throughout the state, and actually last year I had the opportunity to actually write a chapter on mobility fees in the Development Impact Fee Handbook, which is sort of a national document. And this is sort of the process that was outlined in that. So a lot of other communities have started actually adopting this process to develop a mobility plan and fee. This is a schedule. We're going to zoom into it a little bit broader, but this just shows the overall schedule and the base calculation for each of the fees and land uses themselves. Just a couple of policy decisions that will come up at the city commission level is right now the development in the east and central downtown UF area does not pay a fee today. They are required to do some mitigation in terms of sidewalks and easements and transit stops, but they do not currently pay today. And there's also a transit fee that's assessed on multifamily in the UF context area. Under this proposal, transit's been incorporated into the overall mobility plan, so a portion of the mobility fee could actually be used for transit. And so the fee itself could go away under that scenario. There is a provision that the commission could exempt affordable or workforce housing per statute. And then we've largely already addressed the de minimis thresholds to keep the process similar to the way it is today. If you went into Alachua County or you went into Newberry or Alachua and you had a single family home, whether it was on a development as part of a PD or a master plan development or a single family lot, they all charge impact fees or mobility fees. The current system has not been that way within the city, and maybe in 4 years from now, when this is statutorily required to be updated again, maybe the city would expand on that. But as of right now, I think there'd be a pretty significant jump in precedent switch to go from largely a development review system to one that's actually implemented at the building permit stage. So if you are a developer and you go into Alachua County or you go up into Alachua or High Springs or Newberry, you are, whether you're submitting a development plan or a building permit on a lot, you pay a fee. That's not how it's been in Gainesville. It's only been largely regulated by development plans. So in the interim, we're proposing to keep that threshold the same, and then that could later be revisited in the future. Scott had mentioned there are multiple assessment areas today. We are proposing to consolidate those into what would be a southwest area, which is largely the Butler Urban Village, 34th and Williston interchange, the northwest portion of the city, the east, and then the downtown, largely around the University of Florida. The benefit districts would mirror those the same. And as you actually, I'll point out real quick here too, the areas that are lightly colored beyond the main colors, those would address annexation. So if annexation were to occur, that area in the yellow north of Newberry, they would fall within this assessment area. If they were annexed out off along Archer Road or Williston, they would then fall into the southwest area. And that those lightly shaded areas largely reflect what would have been, I believe, the old agreement between the county and city in terms of annexation limits between the two of those. So this sort of helps provide some guidance as new development comes in. The benefit district largely indicates where the monies are collected and where they should be spent. The way we've calculated this fee is each district pays some share of the improvements. So there is some commingling of the fee that could be done, but largely the intent is that where the fee is collected, that's where it should be spent at. And then the ordinance itself lays out up to 10 different options for how you could spend that across jurisdictions, boundaries as well. And some of the feedback that we've gotten from last time is the fee was quite high. Alachua County served as our benchmark, and for the most part, the fees were all lower than the county. I think there was one or two restaurant categories that are a little bit higher. The big difference is Alachua County has had a fee in place since 2010, and then they've recently updated their multimodal program to a full mobility fee, and their fees were already In this area, they were significantly higher than what the city's mitigation requirements were. So that sort of served as our benchmark. But then as we looked at several of the categories, there were a number of uses that were higher. We had also originally proposed that all residential be based on square footage. That applies when you're going in for building permits, but because we're largely at the development plan stage, you really aren't going to know the difference between, development's getting approved for 100 homes. They're not getting approved for, 10 homes that are 1,500 square feet and 20 homes that are 3,000 square feet. They're getting approved for 100 homes. When you actually come in for a building permit, which is how Alachua County does it, you actually pay per square foot of the dwelling unit because they're actually reviewing the individual plan itself. So we have changed that to dwelling units for single-family detached and attached products. And then for any type of multifamily use, we are looking at a per bedroom rate. And those vary for each of the districts, but these have come down quite a bit from what we had originally proposed to you the last time. And really, these kind of represent the lowest amount from a technical perspective that we can support. Should the commission elect to reduce any of those by a percentage on their own or elect to exempt an area, they could certainly do so. But we've kind of tightened our pencil and or sharpened our pencil, tightened our belt as much as we can technically support. And these are sort of the fees that would result in that. So if you're around the annexation areas out west of the interstate, and you come in for a single-family planned development, and you have single-family homes, they would be assessed at $4,441 per dwelling unit. If you had that same planned development that came in on the east side of Gainesville, it would be $1,500 per dwelling unit. So you see there's a pretty big difference between the two of those. One, based on the overall need of projects. Two, the trip lengths itself do differ in those. The one big difference is today, if you come in East Gainesville or the central area around downtown, you're not paying anything. The Northwest pays a fee today. The Southwest area and the Butler area also pay a fee today. And that fee is actually, it is lower than the county, but it's still a substantial fee today. So I don't think that the Southwest development area, any of these fees are going to necessarily be a shock to the system. To the Northwest, they are a little bit higher because it's been almost 20 years since those have been updated. And then, of course, anything above zero is an increase within downtown and the east portion of Gainesville. Likewise, to various other land uses, such as places of worship, daycare, private education, these fees would also apply as well, and they carry over a similar context. They're lower in the east and they're higher in the southwest. There's also a fee for various recreational activities. Now, these aren't public uses, so if the city, the county are doing a park, they don't necessarily pay for this, but if you're doing an indoor trampoline gym or you're doing a pickleball court, they actually charge people to use it, or you're doing a Gainesville Health and Fitness expansion, those type of uses, which are commercial in nature, would pay the mobility fee. But any type of recreational that's purely public would not pay that fee. Similarly, there's a fee for industrial uses and storage uses, and those tend to be relatively low overall comparatively. Office is relatively low rate as well. It does go up some more for medical because medical uses tend to generate about 3 times as many trips as office. So office use generally generates about 10 trips per 1,000 square feet. And a clinic or a medical type use generates up to 30 trips per 1,000 square feet. So that's why you see the difference between those two fees. Scott mentioned a lot of what you see in downtown and in the east portion of the city likely is going to be redevelopment. So they wouldn't fall under the fee category because essentially they're replacing a use with an existing use. And to further help to sort of soften some of the potential impact, of the developments that are going in the downtown area specifically, and even in the east portion of the city, we have added actually an additional street level mixed use category. And this is a pretty broad range, so it could be anything from a restaurant, fast food, it could be a medical office, it could be any type of variety of uses. They would all pay the same rate per square foot, so you don't have to get in there and start figuring out, well, this is a doctor's office, this is a ice cream shop, this is a little boutique. It's a lower overall uniform rate for those type of uses, and it also includes a factor of some share of internal capture, because the intent is to be a mixed use structure and to give some benefit to those type of uses. So we think specifically within the downtown area, but then to the extent stuff out in the Butler area or to the northwest want to do mixed use as well, you'd also extend that reduction to those type of retail uses. Then just a general overall category, which is what most retail uses would fall under. You see it ranges anywhere from $2,600 up to $6,800. For some of your more higher trip generating uses, alcoholic beverage establishments, the fees are higher because the overall trips are higher. And then your highest type of uses are your out parcel restaurants, your supermarkets, your ABC liquors. They all tend to generate about 100 trips per 1,000 square feet. So that's why those are different from a general retail category. And then you have your convenience store, which could be a 7-Eleven, it could be a gas station, could be whatnot. They tend to generate 300 to 400 trips per 1,000 square feet. And then the biggest overall generator per square foot are your fast food restaurants. They have the biggest impact to the overall transportation system. For overnight accommodations, which are basically hotel rooms, that fee's been cut out, I think almost in half from what we had originally proposed. And it's lower in the east and then goes up to $2,200 out into the western portion. And then we are also, similar to what Alachua County's done, and it's done these for a number of years, a lot of the convenience type of retail uses are getting smaller. That doesn't necessarily mean they have a lower impact. They're just adding additional drive-through lanes, or they're adding more type of convenience uses, and those predominantly happen to be, vehicle trips. So those individual uses do tend to generate quite a bit of traffic, which obviously if any of you have seen, like, Chick-fil-A is probably the best example. They put an additional drive-through, it adds additional volume and additional trips to that overall category. And again, we have double-checked all these categories, and they are all across the board lower than Alachua County's for every single one of the uses. And we've also tried to make them as reasonable as we can. Likewise, there are a few other categories in terms of vehicle fueling position, vehicle repair and cleaning as well. These are all based on the overall impact of these uses. And so one thing we did not have before is a comparison of what the fees would be under the current system and then what they would be under the mobility fee system. And within the southwest area, they are higher because, again, it's been a number of years since the underlying fee has been calculated itself, but they tend to range anywhere from 100% increase for most uses. The multifamily, for whatever reason, was lower under the current system. Those are higher under this scenario. As you can see, they are all lower than the overall county's fees. And just kind of going through, the one area that they are a little bit higher in terms of overall percentage is the northwest. That's largely due to the last time that the underlying calculation was updated was almost 20 years ago. The southwest has been more recent, so the difference between the two of those is not nearly as significant. And if you have any more questions on this, Scott could probably jump in a little bit on the current fee in terms of how that's calculated. But we just wanted to look at a comparison between the two and show the overall increase. Again, this does reflect current costs today, they are roughly 3 times higher than what they were when this was originally proposed. One thing we have done in a number of communities to help ease the shock, and specifically to the east and the central district, and Alachua County did this initially when they first adopted their system as well. They phased it in over a 3-year period. We're proposing a 4-year type of a phase in, and we have a little bit different percentages for the east and central versus northwest and southwest. And that's largely because the east and central, this is a brand new fee. Right now, if you come into the city today in the northwest or the southwest portion, you do pay to mitigate your traffic. It varies based on your overall use and impact, but you are paying something today. Within the east and central, that's not the case. So if you're a project and you're already underway right now, if you already have your development plans approved, you're exempt. This does not apply for you. You've already done your TMPA. If you've already made application for this and you're being currently reviewed, you would fall under the current system. But if you're new coming in within the east and central area, what we propose is those fees that we calculated initially would be phased in at a 55% rate. So it'd be 55% of the calculated value. In 2027, it would increase to 70% of the calculated value. In 2028, it would increase to 85%. And in 2029, it would be what the calculated value is. And then after 2029, statutorily, you're going to begin your next update. So you really should be at the calculated values at that time and then make whatever decision in terms of phasing going forward. The way it's currently structured in statute, once you update this again, unless you make a finding of what's known as extraordinary circumstances, the maximum you could increase a fee in the future is 50% above its calculated value. And then you'd have to phase that in over a 2 or a 4-year period. So, there is some context for phasing in there. If, Alachua County right now, they recently updated their fee for their transportation and their fire. It's phased in over a 4-year period because that's what statute requires. In the future, any updates that happen, they would also be phased in over a multi-year period. In the northwest and the southwest, we proposed a little bit higher percentages because those areas already pay fees, but this would definitely help to soften the northwest increase some and to make it more level. So that would phase in 70%, 80%, 90%, and then by 2029, all these fees would go into effect. These are just what we professionally feel is something that would help ease the overall impact. There's no statutory requirement to say that these should be different. They could be the same. There's nothing saying that all 3 of them, all 4 districts couldn't have different rates. Please we feel that these would be appropriate in coordinating with staff on these percentages. And I believe that's in your documents and your calculations. In the study report itself, we've already calculated all these fees at these rates. So you can kind of see what those are. If you wanted to recommend a different percentage or a different phasing, that could certainly be a recommendation to the city commission, and we could provide that as well. But we have tried to be as realistic with the fees as we can be. We've lowered them as much as we can from a technical basis. If for whatever reason there's a policy decision to lower them further, that'd be up to either a recommendation of you all or to the city commission. And then we also believe that some level of phasing in would help to soften this. Some projects have already started planning out over the next couple of years. So not hitting them with 100% right now would help them adjust accordingly and give them a little bit more time to adjust to these categories. But within 2 years of this being adopted, the new developments coming in, they'll know by 2028, this is what my number is going to be. By 2029, this is what my number is going to be. So they'll be able to put that into their pro formas and better handle it. If you're going through the process right now or you're considering or you wanting to buy some land, and all of a sudden you get hit with a 100% increase today, that's probably not necessarily in your numbers. So the phasing is something we've done for a number of other communities that should help soften the impact. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We still have to go, a recommendation from you all on this. Still we're moving forward with the advancement of the comprehensive plan amendment. We will have to actually go to the city commission for the first time with all this information. And then they'd actually hear that, direct us to make any changes, and then we would come back for a second reading for adoption if they so chose. So with that, we do appreciate your feedback. We do appreciate the input you gave us last time. We really tried to listen to it, and we tried to make what we felt was reasonable. We've coordinated a lot of these with city staff, and they've run it through their various departments in terms of economic development with leadership. And they feel more comfortable with these rates and what had been previously proposed. So with that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Thank you, first of all, for all the work you guys have done on this. I know we
Right.
kind of threw a lot at you guys last time you were here, and I'm grateful that you've come back with a lot of answers to our previous questions.
Okay.
That said, we have more questions from the board.
All right.
Mr. Hill.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Paul. Great presentation. Just have a few questions for you. It should be pretty simple and straightforward. For the mobility fee for a convenience store, with or without motor vehicle fueling, if a convenience store had motor vehicle fueling, isn't it like two separate reasons to go to a particular convenience store? So why would it be the same rate, just out of curiosity? Is that common?
Because we're charging a separate rate per fueling position.
Okay, so,
So-
in
so-
addition to that.
Correct. So you would pay,
Okay.
so say you came in with a 7-Eleven that didn't have a gas station, and then you came in with a Wawa. They would both pay for their building at the same rate, but then the Wawa would also pay an additional fee for each fueling position.
Gotcha.
So that's why we sort of leveled that out between the two of those.
Perfect. And then I did have a question. This may actually be more for staff. Mobile residence, that's on slide 18. Just out of curiosity, so we have RV parking that's different from just standalone recreational vehicle. Do we allow recreational vehicle as a standalone use in the city? As a standalone dwelling?
Well, if it would be part of, say you had an RV on your home, you wouldn't pay for that.
Right.
But there is probably not so much in Gainesville, maybe a little bit more in the county, but elsewhere in the state, there are luxury RV parks that are being developed. There are actually
Right.
kind of a pretty cool one in Flagler Beach. It allows Airstreams, it allows RVs, it allows mobile homes. Basically, it's a mobile home on wheels, and that's why we call it a mobile residence. But that would only apply to a park. So you'd be coming in for a unified development to allow those, not necessarily one on your house. And one thing I'll point out for any members of the audience or any members that may be listening onto this that's not here, none of just because this is a category, there is a provision in the ordinance itself. This does not grant anybody land use approvals or zoning approvals or the right to do anything. This is just the category to reflect the trip impacts. So just because it says mobile residence doesn't necessarily mean the city is or isn't going to allow it. It's if it's allowed and if it's approved, this is the category it would fall under.
Yeah, I think I was just tripped up in the language itself, because mobile home, comma, recreational vehicle, comma, and then mobile home or RV park. Is there any scenario where a recreational vehicle could be a standalone, and if so, that we would charge them a mobility fee?
There's a potential that could be a recreational only vehicle. It could be a recreation only park. There are other ones that are a combination. Some places won't. They treat very distinctly a mobile home from an RV, and they don't allow them to be mixed. So this would say a mobile home, without saying the word park each time, mobile home park, RV park, mobile home / RV park.
Gotcha, that's what you're trying to go for.
Yeah.
Okay.
It ends up becoming a pretty long
no,
distinction on that. So.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood
Yeah.
that. And then my last question for you on slide 15 was your policy decisions. And so affordable workforce housing exempt or discount, that's not in the LDC language today that you proposed, right?
It is not. It is a provision. Right now there is no provision under the current program to allow that. So this would have to be a specific direction by the commission to have that, and they can elect to exempt affordable or workforce housing per statute, but they'd have to put it in the policy. That's kind of a decision. If you wanted to make something, a motion to that they should consider adding that, that'd certainly be well within your purview to do that.
And I assume some jurisdictions, if you charge it by like dwelling unit, for example, in a development, affordable housing, the units in there, if it was a mixed income, which we, inclusionary zoning in here, if it's mixed income, the affordable units would be charged a different rate than the market rate units?
Correct.
For the mobility fee? Okay.
Correct. And sometimes those affordable units could just be outright exempted. So say somebody came in there and they did 25% of their units affordable and 75% market rate. The commission could say, we're going to exempt the 25% if they so chose to.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Great. Mr. Adelson, I noticed that you've chimed in. I'm going to go to you first just to see if you want to provide any additional context.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think two responses. Thank you definitely for the consultant on the work for these, and I think that they did point out that the mobility fee and the determination of that fee, they started to get to where that is not the same thing as a use determination from the planning department. So how that fee is assessed is a separate determination there. So just to that point. The second point for the affordable and workforce housing, I think that you all have seen certainly from watching our commission direction and seeing what you all. I like that. If I can get thunder, if I can have thunder every time I speak, that would be great.
You got to talk to your
No, but I think there's support for that, and then certainly, for where the city, I think, has shown both, reason and reasonability for reducing fees, etc., to support affordable and workforce housing. That our commission and certainly staff are in support of that. Of course, in the bigger picture that I think you all have seen here too, the reduction in fees is a good thing and a good conversation, but a reduction in fees, and we're talking about the thousands of dollars, is approaching a situation that's in at least the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. But this is not to sort of speak against that or guide against that. It's to say that yes, staff is in support of that. We have systems and structures that are already waiting for some of these more fees or waivers in fees, and if that supports promoting these types of developments, then I think our structure and our policy is already there.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Ackerman, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have kind of a generic question that it's unclear to me with the four variations, going forward. Are those calculated based on actual costs of mobility, or are they calculated on a policy decision that says in the East we're going to charge much less? And
they're actually based on the cost of mobility projects, the share of travel within that specific area, and a trip length. So it is not a policy decision. It's not an arbitrary decision. It's an actual calculated value.
okay, it actually reflects the cost of
Correct.
that mobility.
Correct.
Then my next question is, if I take that number in its aggregate, does that theoretically cover all of the impacts of mobility for the city at large?
So the one difference of this fee is we take the overall cost of the plan and then we apportion it to each type of land use. What we don't do is we say, within the city of Gainesville, we estimate in the next 2 years, there's going to be this much development. And so we divide the fee by this much development, and then that's blank. That's how the original system was looking to do it, and that's originally how like areas around Butler were originally kind of constructed, is how much development is there, dividing by that. Here, we're not necessarily saying that. I mean, there could be some additional cost, if the city just went gangbusters and a lot of development occurred, there's potentially more money that could be generated than what the mobility plan requires. Most of what we found is it reflects the individual impact of those land uses. It's not necessarily intended to pay for the entire mobility plan because we don't know how much development potential there is within the city. And that's how you would get to that number, is if you knew a finite development amount. What some places have done, let's say you had a sector plan or a special area plan, and they went out and they evaluated their impacts and they came up with this much mitigation, and they were approved for 5,000 dwelling units, 100,000 square feet of retail. We've done this other places. We would then take that cost attributable to them and divide it by that approved development. And then there the expectation would be is if that development built out to that level, it would in theory pay for those impacts. So we use the mobility plan as our guide. And if the city just grows, like it continues to grow, we'll fund a large portion of it, but it isn't necessarily going to fund the entire plan.
I just have one little follow-up.
Okay.
Basically, what you're saying is each of those zones are charged based on the actual costs of mobility, and none of the high, like the Southwest, is not subsidizing another section.
Correct.
Okay.
They're all paying for their own impact,
Okay.
and we're not taking from Peter to pay Paul. It's given the area and given the improvements that are needed in this area, that's what the fee reflects. And our model for that is the way we've done. Alachua County's done it for a number of years, and it's the way their fee is structured as well. The east portion of the county does not have as many roadway projects as the western portion does, and their fee is lower. Similarly, there aren't as many roadway projects on the east side. Most of it's multimodal in nature. Therefore, the cost itself is lower compared to what's needed in the northwest and compared to what's needed in the southwest portion of the city. So yeah, none of it is an arbitrary number. It's all reflecting what the actual cost of the projects are, what the share of travel is, and what the overall trips are within that district.
Thank you.
Dr. Ackerman. I'm sorry, Dr. Murmur. Bad slip.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's one of those meetings.
Thank you for all the work you've done and revising this and clarifications. It was a really informative presentation that helped me understand the backup. Got a few questions here. First, what is the logic or reasoning behind not exempting triplexes and quadplexes? So a lot of times, you have single-family homes, multifamily homes. Duplexes through quadplexes are oftentimes considered like this weird gray area. So if you're exempting duplexes, why not tris and quads?
If it doesn't require a development plan review and it's something that can go straight to building permit, it would not pay a fee. So Scott could probably answer that a little bit better in terms of tris versus quads. If they were to trigger development plan review, they'd fall into the system. If for whatever reason they don't trigger that, and the city's got some various thresholds to that. If they don't trigger it and they're just required to do a building permit, they would not fall under this program.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. We don't exempt them today. So duplex is kind of the threshold for development review today, which is the threshold that we were proposing to maintain. Doesn't mean we have to do it that way. We could certainly, if the board and the commission wanted to exempt triplexes, quadruplexes, any other type of development, honestly, then we could certainly probably do that and draw that threshold at a different place.
Thank you. I think out of fairness, I would like to see them exempted. I don't, as someone who lives in a single family home, I don't necessarily think there's a lot of benefits we already get. Next question has already been answered. I had a question about the medical office fees. I think I might have read the slide wrong. Yeah, so hospitals are categorized under office. And I have never dug deep into a traffic study, but do hospitals not, do medical offices generate more traffic than hospitals?
They do, and actually, it's. I was going to point that out, and I probably should have pointed it out. I actually just went through this whole exercise with the city manager in the city of Altamont Springs because he didn't believe us, so we had to pull out the IT trip generation rates and the studies like that. Hospitals, given their size and scope, per the IT trip generation manual, they generate about 10 trips per 1,000 square feet. Which is comparable to what a general office does.
Per square feet, that makes sense.
Yeah, per 1,000 square feet. So when you think of a hospital coming in at 400, 500,000 square feet versus a clinic coming in at 2,000, 3,000 square feet, the clinics tend to generate, the vets tend to generate 30 to 35 trips per 1,000. But given the size of hospitals, when they've done studies on them, when you look at that big a scale, it's 10 trips per 1,000. So, what we tried to do is on all these categories, we tried to base it on trips. Trips and trip lengths characteristics to keep them separate or similar. That's why, in terms of the high impact category, you have a grocery store next to a restaurant next to a pharmacy. Well, they all generate between 95 and 105 trips per 1,000 square feet. So instead of having 40 different uses out here, the reality is, there's a mixture somewhere in between. So that's what that reflects.
Thank you. And also, so all these fees are supposed to be based on the expected trips generated. Right now, the the fee for fueling station and EV charging station are the same. And that I really have a hard time believing that a charging station generates as much as a fueling station, given the fact that there are many, many, many more gas-powered cars than there are EVs.
What the ordinance allows for is you have the ability to show different documentation. And so what we're hoping is this next generation of the trip generation manual will include some EV charging rates. Somebody will be able to come in and say, hey, I have a Tesla station. This is my documentation of how many trips I've done. It's showing it less than a fueling position. We don't have that level of data at the ITE trip generation level yet. There are some studies that are being done by FDOT and others to figure out how many vehicles actually are using these charging stations. So I would say if they came in, they'd have the right to show some documentation. And if they're a Tesla or there's somebody that's been doing these all across the state, they've likely done some studies that they could provide the city, and the city could make adjustments accordingly. Just the level of data is not there yet for it, and still the number of stations coming in is relatively small comparatively.
If we recommend it, would the city commission legally be allowed to make a change, just exempting
They could.
EVs completely until that data is
You could
available?
certainly make that recommendation.
Yeah, because it
to
seems
them.
like
Yeah.
to charge them something when we don't have the data, that seems a little.
They charge them high, by the way.
Yeah,
On the
yeah.
high end.
Yeah.
And one thing this does do in the ordinance and definition itself,
Got it.
if somebody's providing a charging at an apartment complex or at a hotel those are not being charged. You know, if it's a service for the person going there, these are largely the freestanding. You know, there are some in the state that are coming in now, like say at a Wawa, where they're coming in with both fueling
Yeah.
positions that you have to pay for,
And that- and that's-
and the gas pump. that
Yeah,
you gotta
and that's
pay
what I
for.
figured. Just in general, charging something charging them a fee that's supposed to be based on trips generated when we don't have a sense of trips generated just doesn't seem right.
Like, would that apply to the Whole Foods? Like, Tesla's got a bunch of chargers at
Ooh.
the Butler Plaza Whole Foods. How would that fall under this vehicle charging?
It would today. I'm not sure how it was addressed. I'm not sure how it was addressed when they originally came in to that. And I'm not so sure if those people have to necessarily pay for those. If they're paying for those, if they are, then they would fall under it. If they're, because they're a Tesla customer, they're able to charge for free, then they would not be paying
It's
this
such a
fee.
gray area because Tesla's opened it up to non-Teslas, but there's a fee attached to it.
There's a fee,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
And we're also going to do.
Yeah, you pay a subscription, as I understand, right? I don't own a Tesla, so but there's a fee.
So it certainly could be a recommendation as part of your motion going to the city commission to consider, you know, removing that category or changing it. And some of them we just have to rely on a special study when they come in for that. So that's definitely an option.
And after public comment, we're going to do another round so we can see what we might want to see changed.
We
or-
always talk after.
Yeah.
We can always have comment after public comment, but if you have questions, this is probably the best time to do it.
Yeah, I think that's all my questions for you. Thank you. I did have one more question for Mr. Elton. I didn't quite understand what you were saying about exemptions. If you were saying that like it would be difficult to exempt things, or saying that if there was something we wanted to incentivize, this would be a good place to offer exemptions.
I'm not sure if I understand in, the context of an overall question, but I
I was thinking, could you repeat what you were saying about recommending exemptions?
if you all are looking for exemptions to this, I think that this body and this place and this meeting is the best time to recommend
Gotcha.
those exemptions.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Mr. Nay.
Yeah, I was looking at some of this, and I really appreciate all the work that you've done on this. It's much better than what we saw in June. I had this crazy idea. I don't know if it's possible, because we have high intensity uses. So let's say we had a grocery store somewhere and it didn't have a parking lot. Let's say there's enough stuff around it that it's going to be supported. Now, is there a way, probably not, that you could charge by like parking lot area? So like, let's say, I know that's crazy, like there's a big grocery store, like North Main, it has 1,200 parking spots there, right? Doesn't need 1,200 spots, but it does. And if we want to have, more walkable areas and.
It's like the difference between the Publix, like on University and 13th, essentially, and
Right.
one and say Butler Plaza.
Right,
where
100%.
There's more
Yeah, there's
car
multiple.
capacity in Butler Plaza than there is in that.
100%.
Right.
The ordinance does have a provision that if an applicant wanted to make the case such as, hey, we're voluntarily limiting our parking by half, and we've been able to show elsewhere that it doesn't generate the same impact, they would be able to submit some documentation on that, and the city could consider lowering the fee on that. So any individual that's coming in for development has the right to submit a separate study to show they have less of an impact, and therefore they should pay less of a fee. We are dealing with a little bit of that in like downtown West Palm, but that's a whole other, it's a whole other level of detail and discussion that goes into that. I think probably, the next go around when they revisit this, it'd probably be a good one to have. But yeah, if somebody wants to come in and make that case, they certainly could do so.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. you'd mentioned that in one area we hadn't done this in 20 years. Is there going to be a regular schedule for updating this moving forward? And if so, what does that look like?
Statute requires one, statute requires it has to be based on the most recent localized data. And the statute also stipulates that these should be updated every 4 years. And if you don't update them within every 5 years, then there's certain restrictions that you can update them. And then there'll also be another provision going forward that once this is adopted, as of right now, any future update that results in an increase would have to be phased in per statute. So right now is if the increase is more than 25%, it's phased in over 4 years with a cap of 50%. If it's less than 25%, it's phased in over 2 years. And so it will be different going forward for this, but typically these are updated on a 4-year schedule with the idea that you start on that year 4 for that new fee to go into effect by 2030. So these would all be in place until 2029. They'd start the study in 2029, and a new fee would go into effect as of 2030.
So is it safe to assume then that this particular change right now, because there hasn't been a change in quite some time, at least in some of the areas, would represent like the largest sort of sticker shock for new development? Because this is quite a big jump. Like when looking at the table of comparisons, it is I think a big enough jump that I would guess might discourage new development in certain areas, especially given other broader macroeconomic factors going on. Right now.
This should be the biggest jump that's going to be seen in terms of this scenario. And the best case in point I could probably point out is Alatro's MMTM program was based on a 20-year plan. None of the increases were above 50%, even though it hadn't been updated in 10 years because it was based on a forward-looking plan. The park fee had not been based on it, and now they came in with a new parks master plan. It went up by 300%, so they adopted the 300%, but then going forward, because it's based on a plan of improvements going forward, the next go around it shouldn't be a 200, 300% increase. If you've done these right, it should be within the 25% to the 50% range at the max.
So in a sense, we're paying a little price for not having done it right.
I mean, the city had its system in place, and it served the city well for what it was intended to do. I think costs have increased significantly. I think the city's probably achieved a lot of its goals in terms of downtown, not downtown redevelopment, but certainly around the University of Florida area.
Right.
It's certainly achieved a lot of those. And just like, the city for a long time had no parking requirements. And then it had to go back at a certain point because that became so successful that they then instituted some parking requirements again. I think that's, a good comparison. But yes, this should represent the largest increase. And going forward, these should be much more moderate in terms of overall percentage increases.
That's great to know. Thank you. One other question. I'm not sure if it should be you or not, but I have a question about the output. So basically what this is getting spent on. Is this all being spent just on city roads or county roads, state roads? And we have a lot of county and state roads that run through Gainesville. Is that also getting some of this money?
The way we've calculated it is we include 10% of the cost, say, on a county improvement or on a state road improvement. So if FDOT were coming in there and doing something on 39th or University, we've included some cost of trails and streetscape and whatnot. So the city would have some money to bring to the table to say, instead of just putting in a 5-foot sidewalk and a 4-foot bike lane, can you put in a buffered bike lane? Can you put in decorative crosswalks? The city would be able to do that with this. So there is a 10% share of the costs for county and state projects, just so they have some skin in the game. But for any type of city project, it is 100% of the overall cost.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that covers my questions. If anybody else on the board has anything. Otherwise, we'll open it up to a public comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, member of the Plan Board. I'm Adrian Hayes Santos. Thank you for the presentation and all the work. I'm here because I strongly support Gainesville investing in mobility. Bike, transit, and pedestrian infrastructure are absolutely critical to our future. But the mobility fee as it's currently structured, I think, is too high. I'm glad that it's come down, but I think there's still some room to maneuver. I think we're heading into a likely recession. Many of our retail businesses are struggling as we're moving many to online, and kind of our whole kind of commerce is changing. And the city has a need for attainable housing. Yet this fee would substantially raise the cost of new homes and businesses. For the residential uses, the change was before we had by square footage. It's moved to be by unit or per bedroom. But this means that a 500 square foot home, which some developers are trying to build, they're running into impact fees from GRU of huge amounts for those that are actually making it more difficult too. But a 500 square foot home should not pay the same fee, I don't believe, as a 6,000 square foot home. And that's currently how it's kind of designed in this plan. I think going back to the simpler per square foot model, I understand there might be difficulty with building permit or not, but just I think how it is, it's just not really fair how it's currently structured. This would also help support smaller and more affordable homes that Gainesville has promoted. I think the same thing can be done for a multifamily as well. Usually, the square footage of what's going to be on those. I also think looking at kind of the retail and to kind of consolidate some of the use categories. Right now, the higher retail fees are applied to uses that I've heard many times from supermarkets and banks on the east side are at kind of the higher levels. And another concern I think was brought up earlier on the EV infrastructure. I think that's a good point of exempting those for now. On the affordability, I do urge you to add discounts. I think maybe for the residential projects at 80% AMI, you could they pay 25% of the fee. The ones at 100%, 120% AMI, which is the workforce housing, maybe do 50% AMI. But I think coming forward with some kind of reduction in fees, I think would be appropriate for there. And then also I think in the east and central Gainesville areas, I think providing a discount in those. Right now there's zero. So now I know the other ones they're getting tiered up, but right now it's going from zero. Those are also areas, yes, portions of the central round UF do have a lot of development, but our downtown is still not seeing development. East Gainesville is still not seeing development. Yeah, we're adding in these fees, which the reason projects aren't happening is a lot of them they can't make financial sense. So adding more fees will make that more difficult. So I think looking ways you can discount those. So maybe you pass a fee, but you give a discount if you do those. I also, on a broader picture, and I think this might have been asked, but I know that there is some four laning of the roads, and I guess I have a question if staff may answer. Is the city putting any money towards four laning roads, which I think there's quite a few roads that are in the thing. If that's the case, if you maybe removing those four laning of those roads as part of the money going to the project, because that might lower the overall cost. One other thing is just I think the city should maybe look at alternative funding instead of placing it on the new development, maybe taking a look at setting aside a portion of new property tax revenues that come in for development. That the way the mobility fee is a community-wide contribution instead of just being a barrier to new business and housing. Just one last thing, Gainesville seeing a lot of redevelopment growth. Redevelopment growth is hard and it's expensive. And higher mobilities will make that even less likely for people to invest in the city. Instead, the development may be pushed out to the county, which more sprawl, it's easier, cheaper to build in that green field, and is opposite city goals. I hope you continue to work on this, and thank you for your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that feel passionate about this?
One more question.
Sure, come on.
I just have one clarification on the existing lots for a single family and duplex. Is it also exempt if there's a lot split and it's built on one, or also if there's like one lot split into three? Is it also exempt for those as well?
Yeah, defer to whoever wants to do the answer, because it's certainly not going to be me. So.
Really anything that's not a subdivision would be exempt. So today you could do a lot split and then you just come in for a building permit on those two lots. You don't have to meet any kind of subdivision requirements or anything like that. So I think we would keep that system in place. Yeah, that's not changing, right?
Was it subdivision or was it development or site plan? I thought it was you're exempt if you don't need a site plan.
Correct. I mean, really a subdivision is a type of development plan. So it goes, that goes through the development review process as well as other types of developments do. So today, that's kind of the threshold for applying the TMPA.
Yes.
And we would just.
So all subdivisions would have to have site plans.
Right.
But if there's a site plan, is it necessarily a subdivision?
Correct. There are site plans for like a drive-through
Yeah.
restaurant. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. If there's any other members of the public who want to speak on this, now's your time. And seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and maybe even a motion. Dr. Murmur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So overall, I think that this is a much improved product, but I still don't think it's ready for prime time. And my preference would be to not yet make a recommendation. I think there's more advice that we can give and more information that we can get. So, I mean, if the board is interested, I'd like to go through another round of having them come back. Specifically, if the board is interested in having them analyze what this might do given the current economic context, because we are seeing some shaky economic indicators. So it's sort of...
It may be difficult for that because that's a very fluid environment right now.
It is, yeah, but maybe even like just generally, like, okay, well, how would this normally affect, you know, given the strength of our economy, how would a scheme like this normally affect development? I don't know if that makes sense, but...
The development might not happen anyway.
It is, I mean, I think it might be difficult to, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. It might be difficult to parse out why it is that a certain development doesn't happen in a bad macroeconomic situation. Is it, increase in the cost of materials? Is it increase in cost of financing? Is it, lack of available capital? Or is it something like this where it's an increase in fees? I think it'd be difficult to sort of break that out. I'm with you. I would love to know. I really would love to know. I think it's probably really difficult.
It would be really difficult, yeah. But I think, getting as much information or as much of a grasp on that as possible, a couple hours of work trying to dig into it, I think is worthwhile. But if there's no interest, there's no interest.
No, I mean, please, by all means, make as many recommendations as we're here to discuss.
Dr. Murmur, make a motion and you'll find out.
Well, we got other people.
Well, no,
speaking.
other people need to
Talk.
speak.
We got more people speaking though, so
Yeah.
please don't do that yet.
I'm not. No, I didn't plan to. I will say overall, then, if we were to move this forward today, which again, that's not my preference, but if we were to forward this to the city commission today, I would like to see triplexes and quadplexes exempted just as single-family homes and duplexes. I would like to see an affordable housing complete exemption at 80% AMI, based on square footage bedroom, for a period of affordability for at least 10 years at 80% AMI complete exemption. Also, I would like to see multifamily and single family treated the same way. So we should be doing a square footage, not a per dwelling unit for single family per bedroom for multifamily. So square footage minus any dead space. Almost done. So I know I can be annoying. I also, realize we really want to see a grocery store on the east side, and that's been difficult to get, and I don't think we should be making that any more difficult. So I would like to see grocery, at least in the east side, exempted completely from this. And then finally, EV charging stations completely exempted until there's more information on them.
Thank you, Dr. Murmur. Ms. Bell.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. This was really helpful. Just a couple of questions have bubbled up for me. I'm looking through the actual wording of the updates and the fee credits, or the potential for fee credits. That section seems to not be super flushed out yet. It more says like the city can put together a plan or the city can develop a mechanism. What are you thinking that might look like? Like, could a large commercial development come in lieu of paying fees, just do their own mobility project, or do they have to like pick one that's existing in the capital improvement plan, or what are you thinking on that?
So the way there's a difference between a credit and an offset. So offset is if you're redeveloping a parcel and whether or not you do or don't pay a fee, the way it's structured is you wouldn't pay for redevelopment. A credit is if a developer voluntarily builds something beyond their land development code or comprehensive plan requirements. Like if they have to build a sidewalk in front of their site, they wouldn't get a credit for that. But if they built a 10-foot wide or a 12-foot wide pathway, as opposed to a sidewalk, the city could offer them credit. If there's a gap between their building and the next block, and they do something beyond their site, they could request a credit for that. Anything that's requested for a credit, the city commission would need to add it to the capital improvements program because there are state requirements that you have to track your offsets, your credits that are granted. So they would need to formally add that to the CIP. But that is something that a lot of developers do, or they, there's a new road on the plan and they extend it beyond their development to connect to another adjacent road intersection, or they do turn lanes that are above and beyond their requirements. So anything above and beyond what they're required to do was something that could be potentially creditable by the city. What we found is there's so many different scenarios in it that really it's a program the city should evaluate case by case, and an applicant will always have the ability to ask the city commission to put it in the CIP and for the city commission to grant them credit for doing so.
Okay.
So that is something that they would be able to do.
And speaking of developers, have any developers weighed in or reached out to the city with comment or concerns about any of these increases?
I would have to defer to Scott and staff on
He's
that
shaking
one.
his head no. Okay, because there was that question being batted about whether or not developers were bothered by this, but if they haven't reached out directly. And then I also, oh, please.
So from the sustainable development side, we do consistently get feedback that any new increases in fees are a barrier. But also we get consistent feedback that increases in fees to this type of level or scale, on the thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars that you're seeing on the charts here are not things that make or break the pro forma for these types of decisions.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, that these fees are, like, they look big on paper, but they're in this scale of a multi-million-dollar development. They're really not that burdensome. And but I would say I do concur with something Dr. Murmer was saying, that have we considered on the residential side looking at a per square footage versus per dwelling unit or per room?
I'm glad you bring that up. Our recommendation always is to go per square footage. The issue you run into is when somebody comes in for a site plan or development review, very rarely do they know what the square footage of the unit's going to be at that point. Because a single family home on a lot of record or individual lot is exempted, that's typically when you know what the square footage is. But if you're coming in for a development plan, unless the developer is specifically targeting a certain type of product, they're not going to say, I want 100 2,000 square foot houses and 100, 3,000 square foot houses. We want 100 homes. And then every person that comes on that, then subsequently builds that would do it. So it is one reason we went to the development unit is at a development plan stage or a site plan review stage. That data is typically never available. Could somebody do it? They could, but the one thing you're risking is if they don't want to provide that information, then you as staff are basically guessing what the average square footage is going to be going forward. Somebody specifically came in and they wanted to do square footage, they would likely do a study to show it, or a reduction. But that's one of the reasons we went back to dwelling unit versus square footage, because we're not going it, they're not submitting a building permit. So staff is not going to they're not going to know what a single family home is. They're not going to know how big a duplex is. They're not going to know how big a triplex is. They won't necessarily know how many bedrooms are in a multifamily unit, but they're not gonna know that detail because they don't provide that at site plan.
Yeah, I'm sitting here wondering if it would be like overly burdensome to build in a mechanism where an estimate is provided up front based on dwelling units, but a final fee is calculated after development is complete based on final square footage. Or like, you know, if you were to look at, say, a 100 parcel area and you did per dwelling unit versus like a range of, because like Dr. Moore was saying 6,000 square foot, or sorry, Mr. Hayes Santos was saying like 6,000 square foot house versus tiny homes. I just kind of wonder like what that analysis might look like, what it would bear on the same 100-acre lot, like what the difference might come up to. Just thinking out loud.
You certainly could do it. I would say the staff level time involved in doing that, and it'd be a big undertaking.
Yeah.
To do it after the fact. You either go in one of two directions. You do it up front and you calculate it. Otherwise, somebody would need to come back and say, okay, well, we built out and we estimated that we did 50,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And now we came back and we only built 40,000.
I mean, because in the end, the intent at the end of this thought exercise is to incentivize smaller, more affordable developments. And so really, like, the end result is, well, what's what will incentivize different types of development?
The thing is, nobody was supportive of the square footage when we came in here last time. And now you're like,
I wasn't here in the June meeting, I'm sorry.
I'm saying, like, you guys are asking for, one, a lot of things we can't necessarily control or provide, and two, we're literally going back to what we just recommended to you all. And we spent a lot of time, probably 75 to 100 hours of time lost on all the analysis we did on square footage to go back to the dwelling unit, because that was the direction. And now going back, we could be doing this forever. And we're at the point now, professionally, and we're doing 40 of these over the last 2 years. Our technical report is maxed out in terms of what we can do in terms of data.
Understood.
Policy decisions and stuff like that could be, a recommendation.
Yeah.
If Scott wants to weigh in.
Yeah, Jonathan, we're driving Jonathan crazy because we asked him to change it away from square footage, just mostly because of procedural issues. If we're going to collect the fees basically at the development plan level, we don't know what the square footages are. In order to base it on square footage, we need to collect the fees at the building permit level, which certainly can be accomplished. It just means we have to change the way that we're operating today, and that involves another department. It involves DSD, the planning department, to collect those fees. And so, think about a 100-unit subdivision. You can collect one fee up front for those 100 homes, or you can collect 100 fees throughout like the period of a year or 2 years or something. It's just a little more complicated, which is why we stayed away from that. But if there's enough value in applying it at the square footage level instead of the per unit level, then we can certainly adjust.
Sure, and I apologize. I wasn't at the June
No,
meeting,
no,
so I
that's
was
no
riffing off
problem.
of what he said, thinking out loud. But my last comment is just that I'm on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, so we could also include in our incentives and recommendations report this year to have fee exemptions for affordable housing projects. So that could be something that comes through on the affordable housing side of the. So thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
for
and I don't
taking
know if
that
the
thought
planning
process.
department has anything to add there in terms of procedure, because I think it would kind of fall to them.
You hit the button for us. Let's hear it.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I think, sort of speaking from the staff side, but also kind of being the advocate for the commission. So for staff side, as I think you've heard, we've presented, and our consultant, to their credit, has presented a couple of different options here. What I think, for this body as being the advisory board that the commission would like to hear from you all is, what are you seeing, if any, are there impacts to the things that are being brought both before you all, before the permitting for us, in the sustainable development, but also the city side. And so really, what is the advice from this body on the fees that are being asked, and how are they connected to the goals both that you all would like to see and then the commission side? So in sort of my attempt in some way or ham-handed or other to talk about the dollars where these commas are earlier is to the staff side, or really to sort of the resource or the resource or the administrative cost largely, for the transportation and mobility fees, the $10,000 or $12,000 difference here is not going to build you a road, right? So what the commission is asking, I think, again, just as my advice from you all, is are these fees in some way appropriate? Are they impactful? Or are they inhibiting decisions that then you all or the commission are being asked to make in the future? So are any of these dollar amounts, positive to the negative, one side or the other, impacting your decisions here? And then is that your advice that you would like to change these or advise that these numbers in some way or another are calculated so that it helps you all with your decisions? And or are you guys advising that the commission change these so that their decisions are different in the future in some way or another? So hopefully, again, that's helpful. I think that, again, looking between these different categories on the different spreadsheets and Excel sheets is extremely helpful and valuable. But I think the commission is asking you all, what is your advice for looking at these?
Okay. Mr. Nay.
Well, all my questions just got answered by all this back and forth.
Wonderful. Love efficiency. Ms. Sutton.
Okay, so I would just chime in that if you're collecting the fees at development plan or final plat, dwelling unit is absolutely the way to go. Usually it's a different entity paying at that time than will be building the individual houses. And so if you decide to do some kind of credit or additional charge later, it doesn't make sense. That cost gets embedded in the lots, and it makes housing more expensive. I mean, overall, if we want more affordable housing, we should lower the fees on housing. So it's something like policy-wise to think about generally, but dwelling units is absolutely the right unit. I would have huge issues if we decided to go back in that case on to the square footage. It does not make sense at all in the case of platted subdivisions and when you're creating lots. My real question is actually something I hope Mr. Wright can answer. So I'm curious about when we were talking about getting credits, because I've been involved with a number of projects that have gotten credits for extending sidewalks or putting a bus shelter or doing different things. It disturbs me a little bit that we won't be able to work that out with staff anymore. It's going to have to get on a city commission agenda, which is very difficult and can take months and months and slow down a project. In the case of something that would be a positive impact for the city, the fact that it may take 3 months to get approved might cause a developer to just say, I don't have time for this. So I'm really worried about that, having to revise the capital improvements element every time we want to give someone a credit for trying to do the right thing and help the city. I mean, there have been times you've asked us to include things in projects. So I'm curious how often that happens. It's definitely not every project. Maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 20%. I don't know if you have like just a rule of thumb, and how much you think that's going to slow down those projects, because in a lot of cases they wouldn't be done by the city, for years and years if the developers didn't absorb that cost and get the credits. So I'm worried about that.
So I don't think it would slow down the development.
Having to wait for the city commission to approve it?
Well, it wouldn't slow down the development in the sense that we wouldn't make someone do that. In other words, it would be, it's optional.
Okay.
If you wanted to extend a sidewalk to a neighboring property, for example, and I know we've worked on some projects like that. And that's been a good way that we've filled some sidewalk gaps in the past, is by getting a developer to, do that during their construction. It saves money overall. for the city, and then it saves money for the developer as well. So it's been a good thing, and I don't disagree that losing, the ability to do that easily is probably not preferable, but I don't know, and maybe Jonathan knows if there's some other options that we could, other ways to approach that. Maybe that's a statutory requirement. I don't know.
Yeah, and I was just surprised to hear that, and it's a little disappointing because like we've accomplished some cool things using credits.
One thing you all could do as a body is, and some local governments have done this, is they've established a threshold. So staff under like $500,000, $1 million or something like that, at a certain point, it needs to go to the commission. Under that, it could be an administrative decision. So if it was $100,000 to extend a sidewalk, staff would have the ability to negotiate that. But if it was a higher dollar amount, say you're building a road and you wanted $1 million of credit, that's probably something that should go to the commission. So I certainly think you all, as a advising council, could make that a recommendation to them to establish some type of threshold that allows staff to work with developers to make those improvements. Otherwise, they do, it defaults back to statute and reporting requirements to go into that. But we have done that in several communities where you've given some level of ability to work with developers on that. So that would be my recommendation on that. And in terms of any specific fees, we professionally cannot recommend any exemption outright for a use that has an impact. If you all want to recommend, and this is going a little bit to Mr. Ackerman's comments earlier, did we make an arbitrary decision about east versus west? We didn't. We based it on actual data and analysis. If you all wanted to make a recommendation that east should be exempt or any specific use should be exempt, that's a policy level decision. In terms of our technical analysis, we can't make that type of finding because I can't tell you a grocery store on the east side doesn't have an impact. It generates trips, it has an impact. You all can make a recommendation, the commission could certainly say, yes, we want to exempt the whole east side, we want to exempt this specific use.
100%. I'll just say, like, my comments were geared towards my other plan board members as like a policy recommendation discussion. They weren't geared towards you, just so you know.
And I just want to say, in terms of that's why we don't have any type of blanket exemptions on any type of use that generates an impact on this, because it's not technically supported. So again, that would be a recommendation. Also establishing a threshold for credits would be a good recommendation also.
Yeah,
for the
I really
city
like
commission.
that idea. And Mr. Wright, I don't know if you can stew on that and think of what your recommendation of what that threshold might be, just based on your experience with projects. I mean, is it like $250,000?
I think 100,000. If we're talking about
100,000.
sidewalk extensions, I think in most cases
Sidewalks, bus
100,000.
shelters. I mean,
Yeah.
you know some of the little things that
Yeah.
have been worked into projects. I mean, I definitely understand if it's a road extension or something.
Right,
Clearly,
that's gonna
that's
be a whole
different
different-
animal.
Correct.
Okay,
So if you want to say 100,
100,000.
for now.
I would definitely support that. I think that that's really important to provide flexibility.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to make a motion after I'm up. Can you say what you would support so I can take it in there? Or
I'd like to give staff the flexibility to, I don't know what the exact language is, but to accept and negotiate mobility fee credits for associated improvement projects up to $100,000.
Yeah, that basically it would be just that. Is the motion would be to include in the ordinance provision, staff can offer credits up to X amount of dollars administratively without having to go to the city commission.
Yeah.
Whatever threshold you all want to recommend on that. The highest I've seen is $1 million. Typically, it's about 250,000. In larger communities, 100,000 is a reasonable number as well. But you're right. It does address some of those smaller things, and it does provide some level of flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Rimmer.
Thank you very much. So thank you. I really appreciate the back and forth on the back and forth discussion about whether to levy on the housing per square foot or per dwelling unit. That was clarifying, so I did want to amend my previous statements. Instead of doing square footage, I think a more fair way and administratively easy way to get some fairness between multifamily and single family would be to keep the amounts the same. So if you go to, can we go to the housing slide, please? Sorry. Yeah, so right now it's multifamily per bedroom. So for multifamily, what I'd like to see is those numbers, maybe not change those numbers, but instead of per bedroom, we make those also per dwelling unit. Because I mean, your average apartment's going to be smaller than your average single family home. So I think that, no, I don't know.
That doesn't really align with how the ITE manuals work and the way that trip generations are usually calculated. This is based on that.
Especially as it
maybe you
relates
can
to student,
expand on that.
especially as it relates to student housing
Yeah.
and dormitories and things like that, where you have the 4 and 5 bedroom units. I think of some of the city's parking requirements and a lot of the, unfortunately, there's a lot of other policies in the city's overall review process that this tries to reflect. And I think a lot of the multifamilies are evaluated on a per bedroom basis, whereas the single families are evaluated based on a per dwelling unit. So there are other implications, and there are real trip generation, differences between that. And again, when they come in, there's a lot tied to per bedrooms when they come in for multifamily. But when you come in for a single family subdivision, it's typically, we're asking for 100 dwelling units. They could provide 10 bedrooms in a home if they wanted to, or they could provide 2 bedrooms in a home, but they're approving a single family home. And so that's one of the reasons, and staff specifically asked for the multifamily bedrooms, because that's typically how they're evaluated and treated within the city.
Mr. Middleton.
How many? I'm sorry, really quick though. How many one bedroom? Okay, I guess that makes sense. But how many one bedroom single family homes are there, Isaac? I'm just not wrapping my head around that.
I mean, the vast majority of multifamily that we've seen come in from the city, one, they tend to be student housing for the most part, and two, the multifamily that's coming in, it does range between 1, 2 bedrooms. Sometimes there's some 3 bedrooms. The student housing is really where it gets to, the 3, the 4, the 5 bedroom. For a typical multifamily unit, it's probably 1 or 2 bedroom.
And there's no way to.
Well, we could potentially create a student residential category, but then you get into a little bit of I don't believe it's a defined term in the land development code or the specific criteria that determines whether or not it's student housing versus multifamily housing. So that's something we have to defer to planning staff a little bit more on.
Could there be like a per dwelling unit plus per bedroom above X number of bedrooms? So if you said like per dwelling unit up to 3 bedrooms, and then add again per bedroom. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm not making sense.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's something that could be looked at as well as typical multifamily apartment complex. It's 50 to 60% single, 1 bedroom, 30%, 40% 2 bedrooms, and 10% 3 bedroom type of units. Most for market rate apartment complexes follow that. Student housing is a completely different animal. It can range anywhere from 2 bedrooms per unit upwards to 6. And so it's definitely a different animal.
Mr. Adelton, if you want to chime in.
Thank you. Yes, it's probably only going to make it more complicated than what I think the consultant has really laid out quite well. But you all typically see use determinations. And you see determinations based on, things like, does this meet a definition of a single family or a multifamily use? That is not the conversation. That is exactly what's going on here. This is a conversation about when there is a specific development project being presented, what type of schedule is assigned or determined to that specific project based off of the details of that. And just to hopefully say, again, this is not what you all typically are looking at as this kind of overarching use determination. for definitions that are under the land development code, and the consultant just spoke to this also, the definition of a single family and multifamily is different in our chapter 30 for how you would apply use determinations for this body, special use determinations, subdivision, advisory decisions. What is being asked here is there a dollar amount that can be assigned to these specific projects, almost on a project by project basis, that then can provide some sort of reciprocal value to the city, that the city has to provide to these developments for being developed. Please correct me, Scott or JB, if I've got that wrong.
Thank you. Dare we attempt a motion on this?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like if we attempt anything other than staff's recommendation, then there's just going to be like some reason why we can't do
I think
it.
there's some things.
Yeah, please, Mr. Knapp.
I would definitely support what Stephanie wants to add. I would support the EV chargers, surprisingly, and the affordable housing.
I think keeping it broad and not getting too granular is we've.
What about just
Yeah.
I get that, but what about just one more thing? I mean, so as a policy decision, so they cannot recommend, the consultant cannot recommend policy level decisions. But this potential grocery store on the east side is really, really important. Would it
We
make,
can recommend that.
recommend
If you,
Would
if
you-
you'd
No
like to.
grocery stores, yeah.
okay.
Exempt grocery stores on the east side.
Okay, so I would move to accept staff's recommendation with the following amendments: affordable housing, housing developments with affordable housing at 80% AMI are exempted, so long as they remain affordable at 80% AMI for 10 years. Exempt grocery stores on the east side from these fees. Exempt EV charging stations from the fees, and give staff the flexibility to offer credits up to $100,000 for, there's a term I'm forgetting, there's that.
Credits for improvement.
Credits for improvements.
So you
Yeah.
can make staff discretion.
Give staff the power.
Mr. Hill had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Although he didn't hit the light, but he did tell me. So
Yeah, sorry, I just knowing the appropriate time was due. I'm just curious about the appetite for the EV exemption. I understand the methodology reason, but there's still cars that are still making an impact on the road. Is it just because they don't have besides the methodology reason, is it just because they don't have as much of environmental impact? That's the only reason, or?
Well, they should generate less because they spend more time to charge. I think they still haven't done the methodology to show that they have more impact on the roads, because
Or more or less, and I think when I asked the question, the answer, as I interpreted it, was, well, we have to base these recommendations on something, and there isn't like a separate study for the EVs, so we have to base it on the closest thing, which is gas fueling stations, and that's just as fairness. It just doesn't seem fair to do that, because we know that there are more gas vehicles than electric vehicles. We know that the electric vehicles stay at those stations longer. So even if 24 hours a day, all the gas pumps are full, all the EV charging stations are full, we know that there are going to be fewer trips to the EV charging station, because the EV charging station takes longer, right?
most
So we
EVs
know
charge-
on its face that number doesn't pass the smoke. I understand why the consultant did it. They had to do something, but it's our job to be like, wait, that doesn't really smell right.
Gotcha, yeah. I'm not sure I completely agree. I mean, they're still making an impact on our roadway. The methodology is questionable, right? Because based on what's available, they charge longer, so they're less of an impact than that, but they're still making an impact.
100%. And the idea is to, once there is a study and they come back, we can always amend that.
So this is a text amendment, so we don't typically put in a text amendment to a land development code that there's going to be a study, there's no direction. I mean, a consultant's not going to be hired tomorrow, I would assume, to do a separate study. So it's just not something that goes into an LDC. So I'm just wondering, is it just like a good best faith that this is going to happen, and
Well, at the
EV
very
is
least, we're
exempt.
supposed to be doing this again and starting in 2029.
So 2029 is the next time that they would evaluate this exemption.
Am I wrong? Did I remember that correctly?
That would be correct.
That's worst case.
I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, they're still making an impact, but I understand if it's a policy decision, I can live with it. But
Ms. Sutton?
Can I make a recommendation on that? Because
Yeah.
I do think EVs are definitely having an impact on our roads. People are driving them around, there's more of them all the time. They aren't paying regular gas taxes, which also contribute to roadway improvements. So I agree with you that the impact of a EV charging station is not quite the same as a gas pump. They're there longer, but maybe we can suggest that it's like a quarter of the fee of a traditional gas pump. I think that it should be something. And we don't have the data to determine exactly what it is. In my mind, like just thinking about how long it takes to charge, I'm thinking maybe a quarter. It does bother me that they're driving on the roads and not, if there's no fee, there's no gas taxes, so I think it's only fair the EV station be charged something. And that also doesn't apply, I appreciate that it doesn't apply if people are putting them in conjunction with another site plan. So at a multifamily location where people live or with a commercial development, we're talking about the like superchargers, like 10 of them in one parking lot, where like that is the sole purpose, is going to be the primary place where this is assessed. And I do think they should pay something because that's a big attractor of vehicles and trips on the road. I would just suggest, and this is totally out of my head, like a quarter of the gas pump fee. But I don't think we should take it totally to zero.
I don't have a problem with that, and once we're done with, I guess, I
We got
don't
one
know what you decide, I'm willing to take another stab at that motion, if you don't mind.
Ms. Bell?
Yeah, to echo what Ms. Sutton said, I was going to suggest a proportionate reduction in the EV based on whatever trip counts are estimated compared to gas-powered vehicles. I'm sure there's some rule of thumb that can be applied to that based on charging versus pumping times. And so I agree with splitting out EVs as a separate line item in the table and doing a proportionate reduction. A quarter sounds reasonable to me. I agree with the East Side supermarket, but that's currently looped in with other high impact retail. So I would recommend, if you want supermarkets to be exempted specifically in the East Side column, that supermarkets get its own line item, just to be super specific, because I don't necessarily think we also want to exempt, and I'm not speaking for myself, I'm speaking for feedback I've gotten from the community, maybe we don't want to exempt wine and spirits and marijuana dispensaries, etc. on the East Side, but we will want to exempt a supermarket very specifically because that's the need, and they're currently lumped together in a category.
Okay, so yeah, I thought it because it was a policy decision.
That was just what I was point out, because it's a policy decision. If there is a specific use like affordable housing that you wanted to recommend an exemption, you could do so. If you wanted to say a grocery store on the East Side as a matter of policy, it would not impact the other high impact retail
Okay.
uses. It is, again, it's a policy recommendation.
That was my only concern because it's in the table in a category with other things. And then the last item is, I hear you on wanting to exempt affordable. Obviously, I'm on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, but I think it needs to be more specific than what you just said, or at least do it in line with the IZ policies, because if you get an affordable housing development, the entire development is not going to be 80% AMI. With the IZ policy, it's a 10% set aside when it's over 10 units, and so
100%. So this assumes that, you would be, since it's per bedroom,
So would you be exempting it based on the number of affordable units? Because unless I would
the
just
affordable, any bedroom in an affordable unit, because it's gonna, the fees attached to the bedroom,
okay.
any bedroom in an affordable unit that's affordable at 80% AMI for a period of 10 years would not have to pay that fee.
So maybe staff can weigh in because that 10-year period is different than what's required in the IZ.
Correct.
100%. I was thinking because the
Are we gonna have
dollars,
I'm
the dollar
basically
amounts.
saying we should
Yeah.
align that recommendation.
I think it should be
with the IZ
aligned.
policy.
Yeah.
So I
think
agree with exempting affordable in line with the IZ policy, so staff would have to wordsmith that.
Would that be okay?
Makes sense.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Yes, please, staff supports aligning whatever definition this body recommends with the definitions that we use in other sections of our code.
So that's my 2 cents is to just tweak the motion to exempt affordable housing in line with the IZ, as like defined in the IZ policy. Don't exempt EVs, but reduce the fee proportionally based on their impact when compared to gas. And if we can just from a policy side explicitly exempt Eastside supermarkets, I'm all in favor.
Okay. Do we want to just as a, because we don't have studies about EV impacts yet, do we want to agree on that quarter?
That's what I have written down, that's what I
Yeah.
plan to say.
Okay, yeah, we just have to make sure we say it.
Yeah.
That should be for the video's motion.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Murmur, you're up.
All right, I move to accept staff's recommendation with certain amendments, certain changes. Exempt affordable housing in line with our EV policy, trusting staff to work through. IZ policy, what'd I say? Sorry, IZ policy. Exempt grocery stores on the east side from the fee. Charge EV stations at 25% of the fee for fueling stations, and give staff the flexibility to offer credits up to $100,000.
For improvement projects.
No, I'm done. Yeah.
Okay, so have a second? All right, all those in favor?
I
All opposed? You guys have it.
was just surprised I got a second in something.
You had a lot to get in there.
Wow,
You got it.
2 hours.
Thank you so much. You guys,
Yeah,
we had a lot of questions over 2 meetings. You addressed them all, so
You guys
fantastic.
did a great job. Absolutely amazing.
It's no small feat what you guys are doing too, so appreciate the hard work here. Well, after all that, Mr. Chan, you get to speak again, finally. Can you read in the first item of new business?
I'm gonna stop. That was just always.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Take a 5-minute bathroom break or something.
Do you want to take do you need to take a little break? We could take a 5-minute break.
I would like to love a break.
Sure, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back
Dean,
at
Sorry.
Calling us back to order. Pardon? I think you got caught saying something that maybe you didn't want to say publicly. Mr. Chan, if you could please read us the next item on the agenda.
Yes. 2025-578 Rural King Plan Development Amendment LD 25-000065. This is EDA's item, and they've submitted a petition to amend ordinance number 2023-79, which governs the Rural King plan development. This information is being provided to inform the public of a petition to amend the existing plan development zoning to allow a self-storage facility as it represents a change in the land use and the PD.
Well done.
Good evening, Chair and members of the City Plan Board. My name is Fanetta Lewis, and I'm with the Department of Sustainable Development. Tonight, I will be presenting petition LD 25-000065, submitted by EDA Consultants on behalf of the property owner. To request is to amend ordinance 2023-79, which currently governs the Rural King plan development to allow mini warehouses self-storage facility as an additional permitted use. The site is located at 2801 Northwest 13th Street and consists of a single parcel approximately 20 acres. Currently developed with the Rural King retail store and associate parking. The plan development was originally adopted in 1989 from the former Sam's Club site and has been amended multiple times, and since which is outlined in your staff report. The most recent amendment, adopted in 2023, removed a parcel from the PD and updated its conditions. The applicant is requesting the following: add self-storage as a permitted use within the PD, and the applicant is proposing the development of a 4-story indoor self-storage totaling approximately 120,000 square feet. The update to the PD layout plan to show the proposed building location. The site is served by public infrastructure and existing vehicle access to the Northwest 13th Street area, as well as shared access connection with the adjacent shopping center. Surrounding uses include mix of commercial and residential development. Just to let you know some of the properties that you see on the screen. Immediate to the north, Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Single family south, Ross Burlington. To the east is also single family multi. West is the Bank of America and also partially of the Pleasant Cemetery, Mount Pleasant Cemetery. This is a request for a plan development amendment for parcel 08306-010-002 to allow mini warehouse and self-storage facility as permitted use. In accordance with section 30-3.21 of the Land Development Code, any amendment to the approved PD must be processed through a new PD rezoning application and presented to the board for consideration. Staff has reviewed the proposed amendment and supporting materials. Based on this review, staff finds that the petition meets the applicable standards, therefore recommends approval of the request. These slides illustrate the existing PD layout alongside with the proposed updated layout as part of the request to amend the PD zoning of the Rural King property. The applicant has provided an updated PD layout, which you see on the right of me. The plan also identifies approximate location and proposed mini warehouse self-storage facility. This map shows the current land use and the existing land use. The slide confirms that the required public notice procedures were followed and that the neighborhood workshop was conducted as part of the public engagement process for this petition. Summary of this PD standards, which is section 30-3.17. As follows: staff has reviewed the request according to this section 30-3.17, the Land Development Code, and finds the following. The amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan and intent of the plan development. The proposed use is internal and external compatibility, considering site plans, designs, circulation, buffering, surrounding land uses. The intensity and density are appropriate for the site and consistent with the environmental and infrastructure capacities, which is outlined also in the staff report. The plan provides adequate open space and safe access for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. The site accessible for a major roadway and meets connectivity and transportation requirements. Based on this review, staff finds that petition meets the applicable standards and recommends approval of, and thank you so very much, and the applicant is present for any question as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Member, do you want to wait for the applicant to present, or do you want to ask now?
Well, my question's based on something that might have been in the staff report, but I probably didn't look closely enough to find it, so I was hoping to get an answer to that. But
You can.
yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to know if you wanted to wait
yeah.
to ask, or if you want to ask now.
Okay, and I'll ask now. The buffer, the trees between the site and the cemetery, do we know roughly how tall those are right now?
I don't, but there is a very outlined staff in the staff report that is a detail of information. And that, in addition to that, I did go out to the site again, and it did have details with the trees and what the actual arborist thought as well concerning the trees itself.
Okay, and then sorry, yeah, please, thank you.
Good evening, board members. I'm Clay Swager. I do have a brief PowerPoint, and I've actually got a couple of photos of those trees.
Oh, sorry.
But to answer your question in advance, those trees are a good 40 or 50 foot tall. They're mature oak trees that were planted decades ago, so it really provides a nice buffering along that north side.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening again. I'm Clay Swager with EDA Consultants. I'll be very brief. And I'll answer any questions, of course, you have tonight. I know you've already had a bit of a lengthy meeting. This is a property that some of you on the plan board may remember from a couple years ago. There was a PD amendment, and this is sort of an evolving property, and we're seeing a lot of these properties on 13th Street. You know, there's turnover, there's change, and this is kind of an opportunity to take advantage of a space that is essentially right now utilized as a giant sea of parking that's not really used on the site, at least this part of it. So this is about a 20-acre property. Historically, it was the home of Sam's Club. It was approved back in 1989. They did an addition to that building in 1999. In 2017, the city, through the transect zoning adoption and the comprehensive plan amendments, they amended the land use map designation to UMU. 2019, Rural King took ownership of the property and took over the Sam's Club building, and they did a few renovations and upgrades to the site. In 2023, we asked to remove a small piece of property up on Northwest 29th Place, and that 1.8 acres was bought by the Oak View condo developer in order to bring in their project so they could get the density to build one more condo building. And so they worked an arrangement with Royal King, and that's why you see that little indentation in the top right. We updated the conditions at that time to remove a lot of antiquated code language that referred to, City of Gainesville regulations from the 80s and 90s. So it has been cleaned and updated. So this amendment is fairly concise in the request, and I'd like to just go through it for a moment or two with you and then answer all your questions. So the property is shown here, zoned PD. It's been PD for quite some time. There is a condition in this PD that says when, at the time that Rural King, the primary building, is demolished, the site must be redeveloped based on urban transect standards. So there's sort of a plan in place for that redevelopment to occur on the property at that time. Right now, we'd like to do something in an interim phase, if you will. This is the PD layout plan. I'd like to point out a few notes for you. As Ms. Lewis indicated, the proposal is to allow for a second building. We're calling it Building 2. Very creative, I know. It's a self-storage building. You see these things being built pretty often. They're the new model where they're multi-story. They basically look like an office building. All the units are internal. It's not the old style one-story garage door roll-up, but there's clearly a market for it, and they'd like to utilize a part of that parking lot that's farthest from the Royal King that really is never used for parking. They've got almost 600 parking spaces out there, and they probably use maybe a third of them. So even with the addition of Building 2 and the subsequent elimination of some parking, they still have almost one space per 300 square feet for the Royal King, and for a big box store, that is a pretty good ratio. That's still more than they need. So it seemed like a good opportunity, and I think that's why Royal King has offered this piece of their property up to someone to bring in some a new business and some economic development. The blue dashed lines represent comments made by city staff, and the developers agreed to finalize and add to the existing pedestrian network. There's a sidewalk in part of the parking lot currently from Building 1, but this proposal would extend that sidewalk to Building 2, so connect Building 1 to Building 2. It would go westward, and it would provide a stub out to the north side and to the south driveway, and then it connects to an existing sidewalk that goes all the way out to 13th Street. So now all these buildings are connected by sidewalks. There's a bus stop out there. So there is an enhancement of pedestrian amenities, if you will. So in your backup material, there are just some pretty simple proposed conditions that really apply just to the proposed building number 2, the self-storage. We'd like to have this permitted use be added to the PD. We'd like to have a maximum footprint set of 40,000 square feet, a maximum height of 4 stories. I'll speak to that in just a minute in relation to the trees. Setback at least 70 feet from that northern property line, and I'll speak to that again in just a minute as well on the next slide. Some hours of operation, standard operating hours. Bicycle parking is being proposed at a rate larger than what would otherwise be required in the code. I mentioned the sidewalk connectivity and expansion, and there's architectural design standards embedded in the conditions. If you've seen these buildings, they more or less look like an office building. They're fairly attractive. This photo in the bottom right is just a representative example of what this building would look like. It's not going to be exactly that, but there's glazing, building articulation standards that are required in the PD and the proposed conditions. So this is the photo that I was referring to. The blue rectangle on the bottom is the approximate location of the self-storage building. There are some large canopy trees on the north end where I've sort of put the red bubble on the plan, and the image on the top with the red circle shows those trees. They've been there for at least 40 years. You can see the 6-foot wall over there in the corner, and the trees tower over that. So I'm confident that the building at 4 stories, and they may only do 3, but even if they do 4 stories, I was told today that they're building, the elevations of their floors are about 10 to 11 feet each. So the maximum height of this building should be less than the tree canopy. When we came through before, a couple neighbors, were, it wasn't this request, but they were, concerned because there had been discussions with neighbors historically about compatibility, and we actually added another level to the wall to make it a little taller. So we had a neighborhood workshop. Only one citizen attended. They said they had no problem with the proposed use, and we've actually received another email saying they don't have an issue with either. The only concern they had, and sometimes when you have these workshops, you have things that come up that are not necessarily related to whatever the proposal is, but there's some accumulation of trash and garbage. There's some issues with some aggressive camping and behavior that have kind of scared some neighbors. And so we've been part of working with the self-storage developer, working with the Rural King folks who are out of, the Midwest, to make them aware of these issues. And so everybody's working together with the neighborhood, working together with the owner of the property, sort of down to the bottom right of this property. So the neighbors are very pleased that we're working to correct that issue. So obviously, it was just something that the owners didn't have any awareness of. So I just wanted to mention that was the only discussion we've really had with community or neighbors. So in conclusion, we appreciate the staff recommendation for approval. We appreciate you recommending approval of this PD amendment to allow this project to move on forward. And if you have any other questions, be glad to answer them. I said it was going to be short, and I think I talked for like 10 minutes, so sorry.
It's a good thing we don't put the clock on.
Pull the string.
Ms. Bell.
Thank you for that. Just two quick questions.
Sure.
One, Rural King is still there and staying there. You keep mentioning that should they ever be demolished, it would have to be reevaluated, but they're staying for now.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
And two, this might be more of a staff question, really just out of curiosity. Was there ever any thought to like subdividing this parcel or making it an out parcel instead of adjusting the PD?
I can take
Oh,
a
whomever,
shot now.
whomever.
We are actually working with a concurrent application to do a lot line adjustment via the minor subdivision process. So they would have their own lot there.
Okay.
All part of one PD though.
Okay. Thank you.
And that is in review now.
Okay. Great. Then that's all I had. Thank you.
And just to add to that a little bit, hopefully we don't require the division or subdivision of properties. We might recommend that might be something that is helpful, but in a part of a overall, applicant or property owner's development plans, we don't require that.
I think I was more wondering just in a general strategy sense, if it made sense to split it off and take it out of the PD and make it its own urban mixed use or whatever versus keeping it a part of it but a separate lot. It's irrelevant to what we're approving today, but it's really just genuinely curious if one's better than the other, but.
We recommend these things because it's the thing, but yes, they're not often required for the subdivision.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Edelton, did you mean to hit the button again? No, I was trying to turn it off. Oh, okay. I had already turned you off, so. Mr. Ackerman.
I would like to propose a motion, please.
We have to go through the very formal process of public comment. I know it seems absurd, but we can make it really fast.
How about it?
If there's any, there's no members of the public, but if there are members of the public here who want to comment on this, which would be 2 city staff members, now's the time. And seeing none, we'll bring it back to a motion. Mr. Ackerman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I move that the plan board accept staff's recommendation for this new project at the Rural King based on the staff report and the testimony we've heard today.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. With one abstain vote.
I assume we're going to have to do the second. Is there a second part to this? No.
No, this one actually is just the one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Next, it has to.
Yeah. Mr. Chan, if you would read the next item into the record, please.
Yes. 2025-759 Sheriff's Office Expansion Land Use Change LD 25-000095. This petition is a request to change the future land use designation of the subject property from single family SF to public and institutional facilities PF.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm Jason Simmons with the Department of Sustainable Development. We have 2 petitions before you tonight attempting to amend the existing land use and zoning on the subject property, which consists of 2 separate tax parcels, and they're located directly south of the Alachua County Sheriff's Office facility. So on the right-hand side over here, this is a shot of into the subject property from Southeast 27th Street. The property is located at 1124 Southeast 27th Street. You can't really see it in this picture, but there's a fence right here, and if you blow it up, you can see the wrought iron fence that makes up the south property line of the sheriff's office facility, which is over here. This indicates that the property was properly noticed for notifying the public of a meeting to deal with proposed land use and zoning. And the south picture, or the last picture here, is an aerial view of the Alachua County Sheriff's Office facility and the subject property, which is basically right in this area, directly south of the facility. This is Southeast Hawthorne Road, looking east towards Hawthorne, I guess. And this is Southeast 27th Street. By the way, this petition is LD 25-000095. So this is a small-scale land use change. As you see, the subject property consists of two separate tax parcels, 16092-001-000, which is about 0.30 acres, and parcel 16092-002-000, which is approximately 1.57 acres, for a total of 1.87 acres in size. The current land use of the subject property is single family. The current zoning is also single family. And the request is to amend the future land use map from the single family that you see here to the public and institutional facilities land use, or PF. And this map shows, no, that doesn't look right. I don't know why the color changed. This is supposed to be like olive green, which it shows on my.
We can tell though, yeah.
Anyway, this is supposed to be olive green, representing the existing PF land use designation for the Alachua County Sheriff's Office. And this is the subject property that would be changed to PF. Again, here's another shot of the Sheriff's Office facilities with the subject property located right in this area. This is 27th Street here. And property, the slide on the right is another view looking into the property from Southeast 27th Street. If you look closely, right in here is what used to be a single-family house, which has since been demolished, but this property did at one time have a single-family home on it. So for a land use change, we look at various criteria. So these amendments are reviewed in accordance with the following criteria. In this case, we look at the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan, the need for additional land in the proposed land use category, the proposed land use category, the property in relation to surrounding properties and other similar properties, and the potential impact of the land use change on adopted level of service standards. So with these criteria, and also the criteria in the land land use element of the comprehensive plan, the highlights of that review include the proposed PF land use category is compatible with surrounding land uses. The Sheriff's Office facility has been adjacent to the subject property for many years with no compatibility issues. There are no known environmental constraints on the site. The subject property has access to public facilities and services, basically urban services, that include utilities, schools, parks, transportation, fire and police services, waste collection, and stormwater management. Gainesville Regional Utility Services are available to the property, including potable water, sewer, electric, and gas. And this proposal discourages urban sprawl and encourages urban infill and redevelopment by allowing for the placement of PS zoning onto the property, which allows uses that are permitted by the PS zoning to be located adjacent to the subject property. This just describes what the public and institutional facilities land use category, what it's for, and defines it. That land use identifies land is used for administrative, operational, and utility governmental functions, private utilities, cemeteries, and public-private partnerships or other legal arrangements where the land title is vested in a government and the uses serve a public purpose. The maximum lot coverage shall not exceed 80%, except in areas where lot coverage is not limited by land development regulations. And you see the objective 2.1, redevelopment should be encouraged to promote compact, vibrant urbanism, improve the condition of blighted areas, discourage urban sprawl, and foster compact development patterns that promote transportation choice. Again, the subject property has access to public facilities and services. GRU services are available to the property. Impacts on adopted levels of service for stormwater and transportation facilities are assessed during any sort of development review process if development is proposed in the future. And no final development order will be issued until it is determined that adequate facilities and services will be in place at the time the impact of the development occurs. It's my understanding at this point that the purpose is for the sheriff's office to be able to put more parking in here, but that could change it, they could change their mind or whatever, but there is I believe a concept plan in your backup that shows kind of where they're anticipating this parking would be placed. So with that, staff recommends approval of petition LD 25-000095 LUC because it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, it's compatible with surrounding land uses, and the impacts on adopted level of service for stormwater and transportation will be assessed during the development review process if and when a development proposal comes forward. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time. We have Clay with EDA here to present or answer any questions you have. And we have the zoning petition, which is also out there.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from the board? This is a rare item that we have no questions. I'm assuming there's no public comment as well. So back to us it comes.
I think Mr. Simmons, they could say, Mr. Swigert, presentation.
I mean, if you want, yeah, sure. Have at it if you want.
Good evening, Clay Swigert.
This project.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I don't have a PowerPoint, but if you have any questions on behalf of the county, appreciate you considering this. They do need some room for another small building, some parking. I don't know if you've been out there, but that parking lot's always full. And this is a little area they have to grow. So the rezoning and land use that you're considering will allow them to move forward with that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, back to the board. Anybody want to make a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve land use change LD 25-000095 for the sheriff's office expansion land use change based on the presentation from staff.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second and a third. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. With one abstention. Yes. Mr. Chan, if you can read the next item. It's a related item into the agenda, please, or into the record, please.
Yes, 2025-760 Sheriff's Office Expansion Rezoning LD 25-000094. This is a request to rezone the subject property from single family SF to public services and operations PS.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
think we
Mr.
can have an
Chairman.
abbreviated version if you want. You gave us all the details in the last one.
Okay.
Like the specific zoning stuff?
Yeah, just basically anything specifically tied to zoning, but
I'll give you the highlights.
yeah, the cliff notes, please.
This is petition LD 25-000094. So this is a rezoning request for the subject property, which is outlined here with the star. The request is to approve zoning change from single family to public services and operations, or PS. And again, you see the PS outlined here. Again, the same aerial and the view into the property. This is the rezoning. This is the rezoning criteria, which is detailed in your staff report. The property is vacant residential, located adjacent to and south of the sheriff's office property. The land use and zoning requests were triggered by the desire of the sheriff's office to expand their operations and use the subject property for those expanded operations. The PS zone allows for non-residential uses that generally serve a public purpose. It will allow for the appropriate uses for the subject property to become part of the existing sheriff's office campus, which lies adjacent to the subject property. Existing properties in the area have SF, RMF 5, Alachua County R2 zoning, and an Alachua County Planned Development zoned area. And besides the sheriff's office facility, they are generally vacant or developed with single-family dwelling units. And finally, the proposed PS zoning district is consistent with development in the area. The property to the north currently has the PS zoning, the sheriff's office. The proposed zoning provides a logical extension of the PS zoning from the sheriff's office south into the subject property. I know you can't read it. These are the use tables from the Land Development Code. This is the SF, or single family zoning. You see sort of a sparse set of uses allowed in SF because it's mainly intended to be for single family, places of religious assembly, the typical type uses for a single family zone. The PS, again, allows a lot more zones. No residential zones are allowed there, but it allows the types of functions that a public service type zoning would need to allow to serve the general public and the safety and welfare of the citizens of the community. So with that, staff recommends approval of petition LD 25-00094 because it meets the review requirements, consistent with the comprehensive plan, it's compatible with surrounding land uses, and the impacts on adopted levels of service for stormwater and transportation will be assessed during the development review process if development is proposed in the future. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, or Mr. Swager's still available.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Does anybody on the board have questions about? I assume not, because we've had questions before, but you never know. I'm constantly surprised. And seeing that there's no members of the public, we'll bring it back here for a motion.
Move to approve petition LD 25-000094 based on staff's presentation information.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nay. Good. Passes unanimously with one person abstaining from voting. Mr. Edelton.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just to please express again, thank you all for your patience for hearing the separate items. You know, of course, we've presented those combined in the past and tried to be clear about the different criteria, but at the request of the public, the city commission, and our leadership, is that we've separated these out or been asked to separate these out. So thank you for your patience. We are trying to put the the opportunity to look at the criteria for that land use change before you all and the public, and then that separate criteria for the zoning before you all and the public. So thank you again.
You're welcome. It makes a lot of sense, and thank you guys for giving us a quicker second presentation, because we don't have to repeat ourselves too much. I'm not going to dispute that.
Well, I mean, I think in cases like, especially we're talking about urban transects, right? Because that's a zoning.
Yeah,
That's good to have separate, but that's.
I'm not going to dispute it. Are there any member comments beyond it's 9 o'clock?
I'm not going to be at the next meeting. I have a, just being a planner, I have a hearing in Palatka that night. So I don't know if there's like any professional excuse absences, but I can give you the agenda with my name on it if you want.
That is enough for us under the code as I read it, and I know you all have been looking at this recently for our conversations about the attendance policy, but yes, that now will be excused. But yes, please be mindful under our code of the attendance policy and the limitations under that.
Yep.
We don't consider Palatka a rival city.
Like
so-
20 excused absences.
I know.
Dr. Murmur.
No, I was just kidding.
Okay, fine. And with that, the next meeting of the Plan Board is October 23rd, 2025, and this one is adjourned.